intimate public. What does that mean to you, and how can you relate to that?
Well, I was thinking about that in our looming chat here, and it sort of came to me walking along St Kilda Beach. And I thought, well, here is exactly, to my mind, both a public space, a democratic space, a space where we shed as much as some of us are game to and others not, and that kind of a space where the best of us in our Australian culture gets together. There's that was one aspect. And then I'm thinking, well, as the Minister for Creative Industries, and trying consciously in that portfolio to reshape how we think about culture, creativity and its many values, and breaking down the barriers, which are already pretty smashed up anyway, the digital kind of overlay between public space, digital world, private space, and the blurring of all of that. So on one hand, I was thinking beaches and what that means to our enduring fascination with them, and how democratic and participatory they are. In our togs, we're all pretty much equal.
Yes, that's pretty levelling.
Through to
except for the Swedish backpackers.
Yeah, and I'm more equal than the Irish backpackers.
Okay.
They shame us Irish Catholics. All the way through to the kind of crossover of the physical and the digital and the personal and the public and the private and the digital world. So that's the kind of general headspace I was thinking.
We're pretty, I think it's okay for us to be a little bit up ourselves in Melbourne about the resources that we have, particularly in public spaces and park areas in particular, that we sometimes must feel a little spoilt, and it's only when you start to travel that you see the difference. And how do you see that, can it be as simple as just still having kids and taking your kids to have a picnic in a park or something like that, as opposed to just, we'll just stay home on a Sunday? Is it just, trying to get people to move out and take control of a place?
I think there's a part of that, but getting them off their PlayStation 4s and all of those kind of things is increasingly challenging in its own right.
Yes.
But there's that. But in those public spaces, as our urban density increases, rightly, as I'm sure Rob will point to later, the importance of those parks and those opportunities becomes even more critical to that sense of self and that sense of participation and equality in those spaces, and making sure that new communities on the edge of town, which by any number of measures are disproportionately disadvantaged, whether those communities that are being driven by developer processes rather than potentially good planning, as opposed to where we live. I mean, I'm extremely fortunate living where I live. I've got the St Kilda Botanical Gardens at one end of the street, I've got the beach at the other, go the other way, and I've got other parks, but I know that that's not the case across all of Melbourne.
Is that something that we can look to the state government as well in the planning of these new development areas, that it is so important to have these urban places for people to go, particularly young people? I
would hope so.
Yes, well, that could be a good one on the agenda. You have quite an involvement in sporting clubs yourself.
Yes, I'm the #1 goal umpire for the St Kilda City under-16s now. We've graduated.
And how do you find the time when you're doing that to fit that in, particularly now with your
it gets a bit
massive
harder,
portfolio?
but it's fun, first off, telling now 16-year-olds that was a point when they insisted it's a goal is can be, when they're bigger than you, can be fun.
Yes, it could be fun.
It braces me for the parliamentary process.
Good training ground. There's something that probably I've noticed a bit more, as I'm sure other people have, that perhaps there's not as many people attending church these days as there used to be as well. So we have to look for our own churches, if you like, an alternative. And that can be everything from, and I think that's why sporting clubs are so important as well. But if you're not a sporty type person, like perhaps I am, you look to other community events and clubs to get involved with, and I guess that's something also to look at.
Yeah, well, as a long-lapsed Irish Catholic...
I'm on that same page.
I suppose I found my other secular church, the Australian Labor Party, which is just full of lapsed mix from what I can gather, and substituting one set of irrational beliefs for another. So how all of that kind of works out? We've even got our own popes and our own clergy.
I'm sure. Yeah, you've definitely got. Yes.
But I'd like to think that the secular focus helps out. But leaving that aside, the whole civic world is kind of unravelling in terms of traditional structures, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's what's emerging in its place. And that kind of organisational culture, I was talking to Christine just before about the whole range of not-for-profit organisations, some big, some small, that are moving in as, the state increasingly shifts its focus away from its traditional role. I think there's plenty of opportunities when you look at the massive amount of volunteering that goes on in our community. I think that's an unheralded part of a civic engagement that's not properly understood and certainly not recognised by government. And that brings people, private people, into a public space or into other people's private spaces. And those exchanges are little understood in the wider community, but I think they hold great opportunities for a better social outcome. And as we see, by any measure, to be blunt, the rich getting richer and the poor getting the rough end of the pineapple, those opportunities grow. And I think whether it's philanthropy, the role of the state, combining those NGOs through different portfolios and operation of government and community, that's a bit of an exciting opportunity for bridging those disparities that are growing.
Well, I think that's one thing that we can say about Melbourne people. If you build it, we will come. And I think that is something that we always look forward to. Well, we're up for anything, and I thank you very much for coming today. And I'm going to pass the baton to you to speak with Larissa, and we'll have a chat. Thank you very much, Martin.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.